Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our session, Once Upon a Time, exploring books where history leaps out of the pages, where there is a seamless blending of the past and the present, where the gap between fact and imagination is bridged, offering rich narratives that fill the spaces where facts and figures fall short. I'm sure you've been already introduced to the panelists here, but I will still do this again. On my immediate left is Rana Safvi. I'm extremely honored to be having this conversation with her. Next to her is Harshali Singh, and right at the end is Anita Agnihotri. As we go on with the session, I will talk about the books that we are here to discuss today. First of all, as you probably have already guessed from the title, that we are going to be dealing with history. So these are basically historical novels. Or at least they have used history as part of the base or part of the backdrop for the novels. Rana's book is called A Firestorm in Paradise, a novel on the 1857 uprising. Harshali's book is called Anarkali, the Courtesan, the Pawn, and the Queen. And Anita's book, originally written in Bengali, was called Lobonakto, and it has been translated, and the new title for the English book is called A Touch of Salt. We will come back to the titles a little bit later. Right now, I want to talk about, because this fascinates me completely, I want to talk about the process. What is it that authors think about when they choose to write a historical novel or a novel which has history as its base? Over to you, Rana. What inspired you to write a novel set in this particular historical period?
Thank you, Shampaji. First of all, it's an honor to be here with you, and good morning, Calcutta. Thank you for coming on a Sunday morning. So during the COVID, I have so far been writing only non-fiction, and most of my writing is based on Delhi, and 1857 is an era in which I'm extremely interested, and I've written a lot about. So during the COVID, when I could not travel, I could not explore or do any field research, I thought of writing a book, a novel, set in Delhi of 1857, so that I could, showcase a way of life which is no longer there. Because Delhi of the 1856 and 1857 disappeared after the uprising of 1857, and even for, further duration after 1947 and the partition. So I wanted to bring that Delhi alive for readers, and I thought, a historical novel is the best way to take it forward because it's easier for people to read it and assimilate it. And also I used a lot of the facts that my research for the book was based on the Urdu novels of that time, or Urdu accounts, not novels, Urdu accounts of that time. So I thought, this is the best way to take it forward. It's a novel, but everything else about it is historical except the love story.
Would you want to start by reading out an extract from your book so that the spectator or the audience here can at least be familiarized with what you have written?
So this is the first chapter, 1856. And I've used a lot of poetry in the book because that was how it was. The society was in those days. A lot of poetry was being used. Even in ordinary conversations, people would quote poets. Namaz-e sham-e ghariba chu giriya agazam, ba muhayya-e gharibana qissa-e pardasam. This is from Hafiz, the famous Persian poet. I commence the prayers of the night of the exiled like weeping. With estranged laments, I narrate the story. Now the word exile is obviously a reference to Bahadur Shah Zafar. The summer night was coming to an end. Bells could be heard chiming in the temples of Sheherpana, or the city of refuge. The imams of various mosques were performing the wuzu in preparation to give the azan. The faithful were stirring in their homes. While some would flock to the Jamna river for their ritual bath, others would rush to the mosque for dawn prayers, and all of them would converge under the jharoka of the Qila'e Mubarak for a darshan of their beloved Jahanpana Basha. The sleeping ladies in the mahal of the Qila were woken by the melodious sounds of a ghazal by Mirza Nausha, that's Mirza Ghalib, being sung in Rag Bhairavi by a prepubescent boy on his Ek Tara. वो बादाए शबानाए सरमस्तियाँ कहाँ उठी है बस अब के लज्जत ख्वाब सहर गई. Where are the intoxications of the nocturnal wine? Wake up, enough now, for the dream of dawn has gone. The maids and female attendants were silently setting ewers and jugs for the morning's ablutions. The malans of female gardeners were quietly putting baskets full of fresh flowers like jasmine and roses next to the sleeping forms of the ladies and the young girls, so that the royal ladies woke up to a fragrant morning. Falakara stirred. Falakara is a 16-year-old heroine. She was covered in a white Dhaka muslin dupatta, her long hair and dusky cheeks resting on a silk cushion, her right hand nestled under her face. Mubarak, who had nursed and raised Falak since she was born, had come to wake her up. The older woman thought to herself, Baras 17 ya 16 ka sin, Jawani ki raatein muradon ka din. Aged 16 or 17, these are the nights of adolescence and the days of dream.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. I just want to talk about one more thing. I know Falakara is imaginary, but her relationships, the interpersonal relationships that you have made her go through, especially with Mubarak, those are real. I mean, it can happen to anybody at any point of time, in any century, at any given situation, and that's probably where literature scores, and it's not just about history.
So, a lot of me is in this book.
Okay.
So, the relationships that are there are relationships which I've seen, observed, seen in the family, heard about in the family. And, like my father-in-law had a Anna, a milk mother. Annas were those who used to, like breastfeed the child if the mother could not. And so the bond between an Anna and a child was lifelong. And Mubarak is an Anna. She has breastfed.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
it was based on what my father-in-law used to tell me about his relationship with his Anna, how she would, like I've said that she lost her son and so she came to feed,
yes.
Falak. So that is what happened in my father-in-law's case also. And this is also, a reference to the Prophet and Bai Halima, the Dai Halima, who was, like she was his foster mother. She used to breastfeed him.
Okay. Before I come to Anarkali, Harshali, may I just ask Anita a question? Same question, basically. What is it that made you choose the particular period of history that you did? And interestingly, your book says that Gandhiji hadn't become Mahatma at that time. It is Gandhi Baba. And I found that so interesting. So could we have it from you, please?
Well, let me clarify at the outset that I don't think my novel is a historical novel.
Okay.
It is a novel about the realities of the present day India.
Correct.
About a particular community of people.
Yes,
the
Agarias.
Or the salt makers of the Run of Kutch. It is about their lives.
Yes.
And as I normally do, I travel a lot inside the country. If I feel, I spend time there. And when I heard about the Agarias, I wanted to see how they live. And what I saw is very interesting indeed, that after so many years of independence, Agarias, who basically are migrant laborers in the, migrant laborers I won't call them, they're migrant farmers, salt farmers in the Run of Kutch. They spent 8 months there. But the entire place where they work is a declared sanctuary.
Yes,
so they
asses.
do not have
Yes.
any facility there in the sense you cannot construct, you cannot use a machine, even children cannot have a constructed school. So when I saw their condition of life, I thought of the Salt March of Gandhi, which is essentially for telling British that the tax on salt has to be brought down.
Yes.
And that became a new chapter in the India's movement for independence. So, it is a novel which is about the present, but history has been used as a backdrop, and the novel kind of switches between the past and the present.
Correct.
Sometimes present and then the past. And this way, 3 generations of salt makers, their life has been shown, culminating in the present situation of the Run of Kutch. Of course, it is the The place is real, the context, the characters are imaginary except for the historical characters, but well, in a sense that the situation is not really imaginary, because I am, as an author, I have always been addressing the issues of India's realities of development, questioning it, analyzing it. That has been a part of my writing.
Which is what I said in the introduction, that there is a seamless blending of the past and the present, and we cannot say that the Agariyas had a difficult time, because it is still very much
there
in the present, and we haven't really moved much.
In fact, they were better off under the British.
Probably, yes, probably. Now we come to Harshali. I'm really quite amazed at the ability to write a book on a character who is supposedly not even historical. And it's quite amazing to see how, which is again what I mentioned in my introduction, that there are these gaps which have been bridged. There are no facts and figures, and she has used her power of imagination to fill in those gaps, and so beautifully and so effectively. So I was completely zapped when I read Anarkali, her version of it. I also have to put in a disclaimer here. I'm not a history student. So I have grown up on films. So I know about the Mughal-e-Azam. I knew it was always Salim and Anarkali. I didn't even know that there was so much happening between Akbar and Anarkali. So it came as a shock to me. I imagined Akbar looking like Hrithik Roshan in Jodha Akbar. And when I read her account of what Akbar looked like, I was like, huh? This? So it was a revelation to me when I was going through this novel, and I read all about it. And it was quite fascinating, really. So my question to you, Harshali, would be, what is it that drew you to explore this character who is not even given the respect of being a historical character?
That's a very interesting question, and thank you for that, and thank you for having me here. I'm really happy and glad to be part of this lovely, initiative and event. To answer your question, Shampaji, Anarkali has always fascinated me. And you're very right, we've all grown up with Mughal-e-Azam, right? We've all seen that? Mughal-e-Azam has been, the music and the brilliant dances and everything. Yes. And so as a young girl, I enjoyed it so much. And yet, there was always this niggling thought in my mind that why has the director and the screenplay writer not spoken about her as a three-dimensional woman? Why is she only shown as this damsel in distress who's, lovelorn? And so that thought, I think, percolated for several years in my mind. I think this was the time when I wanted to talk about it, when I wanted to say that I don't think she would have been just this woman who didn't really know what she was getting into with Salim, because she is known as someone, it may be love, but if you look at it logically, it is incestuous. He was her stepson. So I wanted to explore about what would have created this feeling of love, or feeling of the need, the enchantment of doing something which is crossing the boundaries, so to say. Now, Mughal-e-Azam, and as you start thinking about it, the thought process starts rolling, and you start questioning, the fact that Anarkali was always seen as like the moon, maybe, not the sun.
Object of desire.
So I wanted her to be the sun in my book. I wanted to write about the woman behind everything else that's known about her. That she was a wonderful, beautiful courtesan, that she was loved by so many. But I felt she was not understood at all by anybody who came in contact with her. She would have had to have the wherewithal and the skill set to survive the very difficult harem that she was in. It was very hierarchical, and there was a very strict parda system at that time. So to be able to climb that ladder to reach a place where not one but two emperors who created such a huge impact on our landscape were enchanted with her, were mesmerized by her. She had to have something more. She had to have the will and the ambition to reach that stage. And so that is why I wanted to write her story. And, you know, as you very rightly said, that not much is, in fact, she's actually absent. She's not there in history at all. She is, but her very absence made her conspicuous for me. And that is why I think I wanted to write about it.
I'm just reading one sentence out from your author's note. I loved this. It is my realization as a woman that though women speak the language of men fluently, men still have not learned the language of women. I loved this sentence. Could you talk about this just very, very briefly, please?
Thank you. Yes, certainly. I think women as women. I mean, and I don't mean that as a women of a certain century. I mean, even today, I feel that women have become fluent in understanding or adjusting to their husbands, their fathers, their sons, and all the men around them. While men still are struggling with that, you know, they're not able to understand what a woman wants, and hence the books that come out and the commentary or the narrative that comes out, that, you know, women are from a different planet altogether, while that's not the case. I think women understand or have learned to adjust themselves, to compromise, to create space for men in their lives, and sometimes they lose a little bit of themselves as they go along in life. And I think I wanted to put the power back in Anarkali's hands, and I wanted her to kind of own her agency and have her own voice to be able to tell her story. And
Yeah.
of course, it's certainly my, you know, my understanding of what she would have been like. But I hope it resonates.
Yes, the book certainly creates an extremely empowered woman. Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about balancing history and fiction and the way in which all of you have managed to do that. There's a large element of educating readers of the historical period that you've chosen to write about. In Firestorm in Paradise, there is so much detailing about social customs, caste system, traditions, food, clothing, political administration, architecture, furniture. I found the whole detailing absolutely fascinating. And what I also loved was how you have created all those sensory details, you know, so you hear the sound of the azan, of the music, you smell the flowers, the attar, you also have, you know, the feel of the Dhaka muslin or the organza dupatta. So there is, as English teachers, we keep talking about the five senses and how you must bring them all out. And I found so much of that in your novel. So those details, did you do that with a reason, or was it part of your writing skill?
You know, this was after writing 11 books on non-fiction. So when I started writing historical fiction, I just let myself go. And I indulged myself as much as I could. And yes, the five senses, I wanted to incorporate that. And I'm sure you would, of course, have read it. Growing up, Victoria Holt books were very, and Georgette Hare. These are the two books, authors that I used to love. So for me, you know, like the premise for writing the book, or the inspiration for writing the book was, as I said, was first to talk about the city, to talk about the culture, to talk about the civilization. And I get, you know, like I work on tangible and intangible heritage. So a lot of people keep asking me about customs. So I thought I'll put all of that in this book so that it's there for posterity. So this was a deliberate attempt, and in fact I think Falakara and Kaisar were afterthoughts, but the Red Fort and you know, the that everything
and
else
the city
around
of Delhi
it was part of it. So you know, aapne jo pucha about, you asked about the process of historical research. As I said, this is based on a lot of the Urdu accounts of that era, and also on my own research on Red Fort and Shah Jahanabad, which I published as Shah Jahanabad, the Living City. So it was all based on that, and you know, like in a way it was also obstacle, because I knew certain things which could happen and which could not happen with my knowledge of the Red Fort. For example, you know, like Falakara and Kaisa's romance. My younger sister, who was the first reader of the draft, she read it and she said, Ranji, all this is fine, but where's the romance? So I said, you know, how do I fit in romance? She's locked inside the Qila, he's outside. So she said, you are the writer, you created. So, you know, I had become by then so possessive of Falakara, and I said, you know, she'll get into trouble. She said, you are the writer, you find ways. So, you know, then I had to find ways in which Falakara could meet. So I had to create all that. I had to create a lot of characters to take the story forward.
Correct.
Because everything happens in conversation. So, you know, like all the, whatever is happening is described by characters themselves. I don't have too much of background descriptions to keep the interest of the...
And that kind of makes Delhi very much a part of a character in your novel.
The Red Fort and Delhi are characters. They are characters.
Absolutely. Anita, you know, when we talked about history, we forgot that your book is also about geology, geography, social history, gender, caste, political economy. It's about everything, and it's such a curious mixture where you are, you know, introduced to the Agarias, who I hate to admit I knew nothing about until I read your book. So I found the details that you have given us, how their feet are immersed in that salt water, and then when they are cremated, that has to be done separately. I actually stopped reading for a while because it took me a while to get used to that little detail. So I guess you have not only just focused on the hardships of the community, you have made it real by bringing it to the present day, and like you justly said a little while ago, that perhaps they were better off at that point of time and not so well off now. So salt essentially is a metaphor in your novel?
Not really. It is real in the sense it is salt, because it is the livelihood that is woven around salt, which is very, very essential for living in the past as in the present. And I mean, I would say this is the way I write. People who read me in Bengali, this is the way I write. My writing has different layers.
Yeah.
And the Indian scenario of development or the other side of it is equally complex. So I have been writing like that, and my learning is essentially from people. It is not research from any paper.
Okay.
But the part of the salt march, of course, I have depended for that part on research, because there are already historically written accounts of that. But the Agarias whose lives I thought I tried to understand and portray, it is very real, very palpable.
Absolutely.
So,
okay. Thank you.
I can read a little bit in
Please
Bengali.
Please do.
Not in English, because the Touch of Salt is available here. People who want to read the book can read in translation.
Absolutely. Please go ahead.
Since I am in Calcutta, let me read a few lines from my Bengali
Absolutely. Go
book.
ahead. Thank you so much.
You know, this is from the chapter where there are schools for children in the run of Kutch, extremely hot, and children are not allowed to have a constructed school. So buses have been placed to accommodate the children, but the authorities who have done it, they have no idea how hot the bus gets in summer. And there is no arrangement of drinking water in the run. It is transported every day, not every day, once in 15 days or so by a tanker. And if the tanker supplier, the Department of Public Health forgets to send the tanker, that's the end of it. So the children go thirsty even in school and also at home. So I'm just describing in a few lines the school and the bus which is actually school. কিছুদিন আগেও কাঁচা ঝোপড়িতে স্কুলের ক্লাস হতো, চট, কার্ডবোর্ড, ঘাস ইত্যাদি দিয়ে বানানো কুটিরে। ত্রিভুবন সিং প্যাটেলের শৈশবে আগারিয়া সমিতির বানানো স্কুলও এইরকমই ছিল। মরুভূমিতে পাকা স্কুল, তাও পুরো বছরের জন্য নয়, বানানোর কথা কেউ ভাবেনি। অভয়ারণ্য ঘোষণা হওয়ার পর থেকে, আফটার ইট বিকেম এ স্যাংচুয়ারি, কোনো রকম যন্ত্র ব্যবহার অথবা মাটি খোঁড়ার কাজ বারণ হয়ে গিয়েছে রণে। ফলে কার্ডবোর্ড আর চটের বিকল্প হিসেবে অস্থায়ী উপাদান ব্যবহার করা যেতে পারত, যেমন ফাইবার গ্লাস বা ক্যানভাস, তাতেও আপত্তি জানিয়েছে অরণ্য বিভাগ। এইভাবেই চলছিল, কিন্তু শিক্ষার অধিকারের আইন কার্যকর হওয়ার পর শিক্ষার প্রসারকেও ঝাঁ চকচকে দেখানোর একটা তাগিদ এসেছে। আগারিয়া শিশু যারা বাবা মায়ের সঙ্গে রনে এসেছে, 8 মাস থাকবে, লবণের মরশুম শেষ হওয়া পর্যন্ত তাদের পুরনো অস্থায়ী স্কুল ঝোপড়ির বদলে এই নতুন বাসগুলি পাঠানো হয়েছে রাজধানীর কেন্দ্রবিন্দু থেকে। খাড়াগোড়া ও তার আশপাশে গ্রামগুলির মানুষ রনের বিভিন্ন অঞ্চলে কাজ করে। জমির কোনো সরকারি কাগজ না থাকলেও নিজেদের সত্ত্ব অনুযায়ী জমি ভাগ করে নিয়েছে এরা। খাড়াগোড়া, হালভার, সান্তালপুর, আদেসার, মালিয়া এরকম নানা জোন বা অঞ্চলে লবণের এলাকা ভাগ করা। বিভিন্ন অঞ্চলের জন্য আলাদা বাস, একটি বাসে খুব অল্প পড়ুয়াকে বসানো যায়, তাই আলাদা ব্যবস্থা। যেখানে ডিজেল ট্যাঙ্কটা থাকার কথা, পাশের দিকে ধাতুর পাতের নিচে একটা জলের মিনি ট্যাঙ্ক। ফুলকি এমন একটা বাস স্কুলে পড়ে যাদের বাসের জলের ট্যাঙ্ক দুপুরের মধ্যে খালি হয়ে গেছে। ট্যাঙ্কার যে আগাড়িয়া ঝোপড়িগুলিকে ভুলেছে তা নয়, ভুলে গিয়েছে স্কুলের ছেলে মেয়েদেরও। বেলা বাড়ার সঙ্গে সঙ্গে তাপ বাড়ে, বাসের ধাতুর শরীরের ভিতরটা তেতে উঠতে থাকে। এখন তবু কোনো মতে বসা যায়। মার্চ এপ্রিল থেকে ছেলেমেয়েরা ছটফট করতে থাকে গরমে, কর্তা ব্যক্তিরা শুনতে চান না, কারণ তারা যখন ইন্সপেকশন পর্ব সারতে আসেন তখন সকাল, তাপের লেশ থাকে না। Actually, here essentially what I'm questioning is the principles of development. How much consultation is done? The entire area of 5,000 hectares had been converted into a sanctuary for protection of wild asses in the run, which is necessary. But you have made no provision for drinking water for people who have been working for centuries in that area as migrant workers from the villages for 8 months in a year. And children also come with the parents, because where can they be left? And what is the arrangement? The British had a pipeline for them with which the water used to come. That basically collapsed after country became independent. But before any arrangement could be done, the sanctuary was declared. And once, you know how strict our forest act is in the country, once it was declared, there is no question of any construction, any digging or anything. But the pity is that to make education look dazzling, they have put colored buses which are made of metal and which has become extremely hot after winter is over. And the authorities who come for inspection, they come in the morning, so they don't sense what the children go through. The children sit in the bus and realize the oil tanker, which is actually a place for keeping water, is gone dry, and they have no water at home too. So this is a reality which we have to understand, and I have tried to place this in the context of Gandhi's Salt March.
Yes.
I won't say more than this, because those who are interested can
They
always
can read the book. That's right. So you kind of answered my next question, that how relevant is your book even today? It's very, very relevant. In fact, perhaps it's even more relevant today than it was so many years ago. Harshali, one question for you, please. You have painted Anarkali through the eyes of a 21st century empowered woman yourself. So did you want to drive that home, that within the little periphery that she was working with or within, and even then she got what she wanted, or at least for a while she thought she got what she wanted. So is that something that you want to drive home?
I think women have been kind of navigating, as I was saying earlier as well, navigating their circumstances and juggling the variables that they have. And it's not today, it's, I think, forever. I think we've learned to do that because there was no other option. I think women, they were second class from the beginning. Yes. And they were always in survival mode. I think most of us are still in survival mode. It's become part of our genome right now. And inevitably, that's become our default setting as well. So we do kind of fall back to that. However, I think with education, with financial independence, with the reality setting in that we will need to depend only on ourselves to kind of come out of this phase that is a long tunnel with no end in sight, it seems sometimes. We have kind of figured out a way to find our core strength, our emotional strength. And I wanted Anarkali, and I think most of us, most women have that core emotional strength that at some point in their life they dip into or they realize. There's always a moment, I think, in a woman's life, sometimes early, sometimes late, when she realizes that, okay, there's nobody coming to save me, I have to, save myself. And most of, in fact, one of the very interesting part of writing the book was that everybody interpreted it in a very different way. So I had someone, like in an August gathering like yours here, someone get up and say that I thought the book was about a mother's love, that how she knew that she could use love even as a weapon. And even in that usage or manipulation, she was able to keep her child forward, do things for her child so that her child would have a chance to claim the throne. And so I said, my God, that's another interpretation that probably I was not working towards that. It was not an intentional thing that I was putting in. But yes, now I understand that someone who's able to relate to a character from their perception, as Buddha has very correctly said, that I am not what you think, I am. You are what you think I am. So if you let these two lines settle in your mind, you realize that it's all about perception, that you look at a person how you see yourself also. And so you take away from that person what you are. And that is what I think the book was also about, that everybody, when I spoke to, historians, history teachers in Aligarh Muslim University, there was a certain understanding of Anarkali in a very specific way. Like she was pigeonholed only as a courtesan, only as a dancer, nachne gaane wali, who's only there for the pleasure of the king, the courtiers, etc. And I wanted to break that. I wanted to make, maybe have even two people read the book and say, okay, there must be more behind the lady. And that is why I think I wanted it.
Yeah, and there was, what I liked very much is all the introspective questions that she keeps asking herself. I mean, I've got a couple of lines here. She's written at one point of time, shouldn't I be happier? And another time she says, am I only the means to an end? And even the politics of the time, I thought that line was fascinating when she says, I couldn't let her dreams ruin mine. My God, what power, that woman. You have invested her with so much power. I mean, all that we know about her is that she was immured in that wall. And that's all we got to know. But then it's just amazing.
And she says this to her mother. I mean, she's thinking about this, this line that, I can't let her dreams kill mine. This is in relation to her own mother. So, you have to have that ability to put yourself before everything and everyone. And then because what I wanted to bring about or amalgamate was that are women still free to choose what they want? Are they still struggling to choose between love and ambition? Why is ambition such a bad word for a woman?
Well, ambition is a bad word anywhere. Macbeth was ambitious. Look what happened to him. I just want to very briefly talk about the structure of what I found interesting about your structures. In Firestorm, I see that all the chapters open with and close with Urdu couplets, and you have given a translation, of course. Is it for the mood and the culture of the time? Did you want to tie it all up when you were writing?
That was the atmosphere and the ambience of the city in those days. Even till my childhood, I remember my mother quoting Urdu and English verses on every occasion. So that was how the people lived, and that was a way of that was their lifestyle. So I wanted to keep that. As I said, I wanted to keep the mood very much 19th century, mid-19th century is how it would have been. So that was part of that. Also, like the songs, like Harshali, the Sutradhar in a way that she is. She keeps singing Hazrat Amir Khusro songs. So that again for me sets the tone of the city, of steeped in a kind of a mystical ambience also, as well as very materialistic also. So I have the dhobis who are talking about their problems, and so I wanted to show very different shades of the city, like and I wanted to show the 1857 uprising, which I feel has not been written about too much from the Indian point of view. I wanted to do Indian lens for the 1857 and why it failed. So all these things, you know, like tied together, and like in the one place I have a dhobi saying that whether it's holy or whether it's blood, we have to wash it.
Correct.
So, you know, like I wanted to give that, you know, and they also have their own songs and poetry. So I wanted to give across the classes, across the people, and all the poets that I have used are those who were present and writing in 1857. So that is something I've been very particular
that I read
about.
in your note in the beginning.
And the other thing is that on 16th of May 1857, when the Europeans are massacred, after that point I stopped giving any poetry, because I said now Shah Jahanabad, all poetry was gone in Shah Jahanabad. So I've tried to use poetry, I've tried to use the buildings, a lot of things as idioms and metaphors and symbols to take the story forward, and to, you know, like this book is written in English, but I've thought of it in Urdu, and I've thought of it as somebody who was living in that very period. So for a long time when I was writing this book, I was in 1857, I was in 1856, I was Falakara, I was Mubarak, I was Nasiban.
So you time-traveled as well.
Yes, and you know, like, so, and I said, I just let myself go, I just let the words flow, and you know, like, in non-fiction, there is only that much that you can write, because you have to be very precise, you have to be very authentic, whatever you're writing has to be authentic. So the historical part of it is all authentic, everything. But, and the culture and the civilization that I've shown. But the words then, I just let myself go and let a lot of music, and so that in the end when I write now that Shah Jahanabad was widowed. So, you know, then you know what you have lost.
Yes. Anita, I find in your book there is no dialogue. Was that a deliberate choice? Did you want to write a novel which will not have any dialogue in it?
No, I don't think. There are dialogues, of course, between Sukhi and Tribhuban.
Yes.
There are occasionally between, in the Gandhi's team there is dialogue, but it is not a conversation in that sense, because that was, of course, I rarely plan how I should write. My writing is mostly organic, and it goes the way it takes me. So it is not planned, but I think there was not a space for a long conversation anywhere in the book, and I think it is okay.
No, of course, I'm not asking you whether it's okay. Of course it's okay, it's your book. But I was just curious, because when you read a novel, there's pages and pages of dialogue.
Journey. You have to understand that there is a travel. I mean, between the present time and, let us say, Dandi March, which happened 90 years back, there is a travel, which is, a lot of things are happening in that.
At that time.
But it is not things only, events only. These are introspective moments as well.
That's right.
But having conversation in that sense, in which probably novels, a big novel would have, it doesn't have.
It might take away from the narrative quality. Is that what you're saying?
I probably so, but then looking back, I can only justify what I've written.
That's okay. Harshali, in your book, there was a lot of movement between the past and the present. You didn't allow the readers to forget that brick wall was being built, and it comes up to the waist and it comes up to her eyes. And so that is a constant reminder that this is the fate that that woman ultimately had to be faced with.
Yes, that's true. So as I was writing the book, as Ranaji very rightly said, you had to transport yourself into being the character and feeling everything that was around it. As we were talking about the senses, I think that adds to the reading experience. I think we write as we read. So if you, I mean, I like to read a book which completely involves me, makes sure that I'm hooked from, you know, and everything else becomes coming in the way of my reading. And that is how I would like to write. And inevitably, that can only happen once you feel you're part of, or you are the character. You can't do justice to the character if you don't feel you are the character. I mean, if you're writing from another, another place, you can't really, the reader will understand. We have a very intelligent reader. And so when I'm reading a book, I need to feel that I am the character. And if the author is not the character, how will I feel I am the character? So certainly, I think so far as shifting between the past and the present, inevitably when you know your end is near, or so I would imagine, I would look back on my life and wonder whether whatever I did, whoever I did it with, was it the right choices that I made? Are there any regrets? Would I want to do a redo if I could? Would I want to reroute? And if I had the chance. And so far as Anarkali, I think she knew what was coming her way. And so when you're seeing that happening to you, you would question the choices you made that have you standing at this place, being buried alive, knowing that's the end. The end is right there. It's right staring at your face. So I wanted to bring that feeling of happiness, and then also realization that that happiness also came at a cost. So every action has a consequence. Every action will have a reaction. You will have to face the consequences of the choices that you make, good or bad. Yeah, So I think that was where I was coming from, and I felt it made for good texture to the book.
Very. This discussion can go on forever, but we don't have so much time. So we have about 8.5 minutes left. So if anybody from the audience would like to ask the questions, our authors here can... is there a microphone that can go around, please? Please, if you could, if there's somebody specifically you're asking, please could you spell out the name? Thank you.
My question to Rana madam, that during 1857 most of the focus was on Awadh region, Kanpur and Meerut uprising, and Delhi was downgraded in terms of capital to provincial region, and Bahadur Shah Jafar was in exile. So still I am figuring out that what single motivation led you to focus on that particular years, 2-3 years in Delhi to make it happening and write a book on this.
Thank you. As you said, I felt that not too much justice has been done to the uprising in Delhi, because that's where it started. And not just the uprising, because it was a very, very inclusive uprising. So I wanted to bring that fact out, and that is what I brought out through the Ishtihar of Maulvi Bakar, where Maulvi Bakar says that we are all Ahle. But there was an attempt by the British to divide and rule during the uprising itself, and there were some posters that were posted on the Jama Masjid saying that, Muslims and Christians are Ahle Kitab, their book, they come from the same revealed book tradition. And, it's the Hindus who are your natural enemies. And the Basha and Bakht Khan, who was the commander-in-chief at that time, they got those posters removed. And in the next edition of the Delhi Urdu Akhbar, Maulvi Muhammad Bakar issued wrote an opinion piece on that, saying that we are Ahle Watan, and we are we are compatriots, we are people of the same nation, and we've lived together in harmony for 1,000 years, and we are fighting against the Firangi, we are fighting against a foreign force. So this sense that came, and the direction that came to the Awadh region also, it all came from Delhi. It was, everybody fought under the banner of Bahadur Shah Zafar, and Bahadur Shah Zafar's leadership at that point of time has been questioned by many, so I wanted to bring all that out. Maybe it's in a form of a novel, but the facts that I've written are all authenticated, all authentic. In fact, one of the accounts, Dastan-e-Qadar, written by Zahir Dehlvi, I have Zahir Dehlvi as a character himself, so that he can, whatever is written in the book, I can, he speaks that there. So I have used all that. I used Kaisar as a, in the army itself, so that he could give the story of the army.
Yeah, there's one more question from there.
Hello, my question to Rana ji. Actually, I follow you in Twitter, and I enjoy your tweets very much, along with Mr. Darimpal and Elena Mukherjee. I love them all, but my question is, why do you turn off your comment section? I couldn't understand.
So, you see, from 2009 that I've been on Twitter, for the first, almost till 2019 or so, I used to engage a lot with people. And then I used to answer each and every, for me, Twitter became a kind of a drawing room, and it was only polite that somebody talks to me, I give them a reply. But then 2019, 20 onwards, there became a lot of trolling started. So now, you send me a DM, add you as a friend, then you can answer. So now I've, like only interact with people whom I follow, so that I stay sane. Otherwise, the trolling upsets me a lot.
I have a common question to Anita madam and Rana. See, I will remember both of you for your non-fictional work. For me, you are the author of Shahjahanabad, and for me, you are the author of Kumar Tulit Pratima Shilpi. My question is, when your kind of people go to write historical fiction, is not there any fear in your mind that historical fiction sometimes can become fictionalized history? And in our kind of country, that is dangerous, where people do not read history book, they learn history from the film like Anarkali and Mughal-e-Azam. In our kind of country, this kind of culture, fictionalized cinema, fictionalized novel, these are dangerous, where the real academic culture of history study is not at all there. Madam, I am no way attacking you. Please don't take me otherwise.
No, not at all.
Yes.
So for me, I'll answer it, Anitaji, before. So for me, the entire history in the book is all authentic. There's nothing fictional about the history. The only thing fictional is the love story. So that everybody, and that is given as a disclaimer in the beginning. So if anybody wants to quote from that, whether it's the music, whether it's the poetry, whether it's the 1857 uprising or anything that's happening in the court, all that is based on authentic sources. And I've given that at the end. So nothing is fictional.
May I just say one thing here in your defense? If you as a writer, if you take your research very, very seriously and you are committed to what you are doing, I don't think it will ever become fictionalized history. That you will do when you want to, when you're looking at a commercial angle and you're looking at profit. So I think it also depends on who is making the film and who is writing the book.
No, I'll add
just
to
take
this.
a minute to answer your question. The book you mentioned was written 25 years back. I'm sure you have been reading me after that. I'm not a non-fiction writer. I'm a creative fiction writer in Bengali, and I have not written any historical novel. Only thing I used in this, see, there is a risk being a writer anytime. Whatever you write, the most excellently researched matter may get you brickbats. So writer cannot think of those things. One has to be accountable to your time and people and yourself. That's all.
So I'll add a little bit to that. I understand your point, but the fact of the matter is that when you're reading historical fiction, therein the words are very clear. You can't go wrong there. So nobody, any writer worth their salt will not touch history at all. In Anarkali as well, the fact that wherever Akbar or Salim are mentioned, or Jahangir as he was later named, that is fact and history. You, especially authors, will never play around with history, even in historical fiction. But the fiction part comes in, as Shampaji was saying earlier, that there is a bridge to be created between fact and fiction. Only there you fit in the fiction. It depends on how much is written about the person already. And from there you take on. But we never touch the facts. We never touch or play around with history, so that when a person is reading, as Rana ji was also saying, that you can quote the historical facts that Akbar was here, or Fatehpur Sikri was left at this point of time, or it was created at this point of time. That you don't play around with. So history is sacrosanct. But again, you also need to know that history was written by people, by human beings, by males, by a person who had so much influence on another person, because Akbar was illiterate, right? So the court historians must have so much influence on him, because they knew that, he knew that they are writing about his reign. So, that understanding for a reader also is very essential, as the responsibility lies on an author that they don't play around with history. So rest assured, please read with lots of pleasure.
We have possibly just time for one more question.
One question
One
from
more
my
question.
side. Yeah, one.
This is good morning to everybody over here. This is Babu Sai, and I'm rising on behalf of all men across the universe, right? This is a universal question. This is not a question just related to the books which has been published here. This is a question to Harshali ji. What does a woman wants from men?
At this age, I can say respect.
That's wonderful. Thank you, sir.
One last.
And understanding and, you know.
That was very important for me to know, because we have been chased by this question for so many years, and maybe we will be chased for so many years again. Like this is
I'm
the
not
answer. Thank
sure
you.
we have time for one more, because my clock tells me that we have reached 0.00.
Thank you, Harshali. Don't
worry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We've been told to stick to the time. So thank you very, very much, all of you here, being such wonderful with your answers, and all of you taking such an interest on a Sunday morning, like some of you said. It was an absolute pleasure to be here with you, and I look forward to many more. Thank you very much.
We can answer questions while we are signing books.